ようこそどうぞはじめまして
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. And I want to kick things off by apologizing to everyone. Last episode said that I didn't think all the anime would be out by the time we got to this episode. And I think pretty much all the anime is out at this point.
I would say so.
There's a few stragglers, but I think definitely the shows that we were actually looking forward to seeing have all come out.
Definitely.
So I know, I'm sure you were excited for Rifle is Beautiful. I'm not sure if that came out yet.
Yeah, but, unfortunately, I have to apologize to our lovely listeners. Unfortunately, I know this is what you've all been waiting for. You've been excitedly talking on the social media and the GLORIO forums that don't exist. Oh man, what's G gonna say about Rifle is Beautiful? Well, I'm sorry, guys. I couldn't get to it in time, you know.
I watched half of it. It's basically like K-On! With rifles.
That's okay. Tell me more.
Okay. Well, we're going to hold up the entire podcast just for that one terrible tragedy. But we'll have plenty of other things to talk about. Is basically what I'm getting at. So,
indeed.
Telling me the My Hero Academia recap episode wasn't the greatest anime I've ever seen.
Oh, I didn't even put that on the list, but it sounds like we
should talk
probably
about that
for the best. That we
should get to that real quick.
It was a recap episode.
Yeah.
Fine.
Oh,
okay.
It's just I'm so disappointed. I'll leave it at
that. I'm not going to defend the recap episode. I will just say that
What'd you expect? It's been a year.
A, what did you expect? But B, compared to all the other filler episodes we've seen in the likes of Fire Force and Demon Slayer, I will say that it is a testament to the generally solid pacing and production of My Hero Academia that recap did not feel agonizingly tedious.
All right. Well, we can touch base with My Hero Academia another day, perhaps. But so before we get into the rest of the talking, just to introduce everybody, I'm Gel, and with me today I have Iro.
Yep, I'm still here. Another season.
G.
Yo.
And joining us this episode, we have Marlin.
Buonanotte from Italy.
Yes.
JoJo was earlier this year.
Shut up, hero.
Yeah, JoJo's finally over. Until the next inevitable part, I'm sure. But all right, so if you haven't figured it out, today's episode is going to be giving our first impressions on the fall 2019 season, as well as a couple of other things that have happened recently that we have not had a chance to talk about. So we're going to touch on those now. And we're going to start by catching up with some tokusatsu and the current running Kamen Rider 01. Is that correct?
Kamen Rider 01, which is a pun because 0 is Rei and 1 because it's the Reiwa era now.
Yes.
But yeah, this started 6-7 weeks ago, and I made the decision that we didn't need to talk about it until the new season, first impression stuff, because it lined up close enough. But it's been pretty good so far. Which, of course, 6 episodes into a year-long series is a little early to make any real judgments. But I've been enjoying it.
What's the hook on this one?
Yeah, the hook on this one is there's a corporation that makes robot buddies, robot laborers and friends. And the main character is a stand-up comedian who inherits the company from his grandfather, who passed away recently. So he's now the president CEO of Hiden Industries that produces robots. But you see the evil hackers, metsubojinrai.net, which I think is something like thunderstrikeextinction.net or something. They're putting viruses in the robots that make them turn evil and start killing people.
So what you're saying is this is Gridman.
No, I was gonna say you realize you're just describing the plot of the third Iron Man movie, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
That's good,
and so using the power of Kamen Rider, that was hidden by his grandfather. He must stop the bad robots and prove that robots are good, actually.
Jin Saotome's grandfather had a Kamen Rider in the basement.
And there's also some other Kamen Riders who are part of the like AI law enforcement division. You know, they investigate AI crimes. They've got Gun that transforms.
Oh, so it's also Psychopaths.
No, you see, no, the gun. They have it's a gun, but also they put the gun on the belt, and then they transform to Kamen Rider with the gun.
Wait, what? So like they don't actually use the gun?
Oh no, they use the gun.
Oh, okay.
I believe this.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Sure.
Yeah, and there was an incident in the past where the first city fully built to have humans and AIs live amongst each other was destroyed in a freak accident that may have been caused by AIs running rampant and killing everyone.
Oh.
And so all these plot threads are converging at some point. But it's been solid, considering the past few have been not good. It's kind of... We've always joked there's the balance, though. When Super Sentai is good, Kamen Rider is bad. And when Kamen Rider is good, Super Sentai is bad. And so with Rio Soldier being bad, it's time for Kamen Rider 01 to be good.
Kamen Rider's time to save us.
Sounds fair enough.
So, like on a scale between like the Durian Rider to the Grape Rider from Gaim, like what's the silliness scale of this show?
It's more silly than not, I would say, but it's not excessively goofy, other than the main character being a stand-up comedian. So he makes really terrible puns all the time.
So it's
and everyone is like, nobody likes the puns except for the rival, but he's always like trying to hide that he thinks it's funny.
That's actually pretty funny.
That's pretty good.
So like,
I do wonder what. Sorry, Marlin. Go ahead.
I was just thinking like, you don't think there's any chance for this to go like Gaim, where it like really delves into the philosophical idea of
this
AI?
Bucci, Marlin.
I don't. I get the impression that nothing will ever be like Gaim again.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, unless Urobuchi comes back to direct another Kamen Rider, I guess.
Right.
All right. Well,
sounds good though.
It's good to hear, because I feel like it's been a long time since I've heard you guys say there's been a good Kamen Rider. Mm-hmm. So it's good to hear it's back.
Like, I don't instantly want to punch everyone in the face. So
yeah,
that's usually a good sign with characterization.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's positive for a show.
There's a cool lady Kamen Rider. That's a rarity.
Yeah, that's rare.
How often does she need to get rescued by a strong man?
Never so far.
All right. Hey,
except
sure.
for that, she's doing more saving than being saved.
All right. Look, we've been watching a lot of bad shonen lately. Okay, my expectations are rock bottom.
Female Kamen Riders have a tendency to die.
Well,
so
that might still happen.
Don't you see the only way to motivate a male hero is to kill the women that are close to him.
It might still happen, but like at the very least, she's in the opening. She seems like she's part of the power trio. You know, like she seems like a major character.
Okay,
so
it's a new. We're in the Reiwa era. It's a new era. Maybe it's time for change. All right. Well, perhaps we'll check back on that another time. I believe Zig is still writing about it too, right?
Maybe. So hopefully it won't totally fall apart like Build did.
Yes. Well, it sounds like it's made it further than Build ever did, right? Like,
no, we watched Build to the end because it was a massive train wreck.
No, but I mean, as far as staying good.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. You watched it, but it was still bad. Yeah, and I think Zig is still writing about it, so you can keep an eye out for that, everybody. All right. One more thing before we get to the new TV shows. We had talked about the movie. Well, I guess it's kind of a movie. It came out on Crunchyroll too. But we were talking about Black Fox. which, if everybody recalls, this was the movie by Studio 3 Hertz, who we at the GLORIO blog, I don't know about the rest of the planet, but we at the GLORIO blog have been kept an eye on after their work with Flappers and Princess Principal.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anybody else got a chance to watch it yet. I watched it last night, and it's really good.
Glad to hear it.
It is, and I'll give you the spoiler.
I watched it as well.
Oh, you watched it, Marlin? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll still give like my spoiler free take. It's kind of a mishmash of, or perhaps maybe a delicious stew of things you would want in your anime, like ninjas, robots, superpowers, stuff like that.
It definitely made me think of like Promare or Promare, whatever we're supposed to call it.
We are still struggling with that pronunciation.
In the sense that like it was definitely trading on its action and not so much its characterization, because like because of the way it was made, like some characters just get kind of introduced and you just kind of they just gotta go from there. Yeah, they just show up. You know, not a whole lot of backstory to it.
Yeah, but are any of them named Deus Ex Machina?
No.
Whoa!
Nothing will ever be that great. But
as long look, you called attention to it. If you had just left it alone, nobody would have noticed.
So I was gonna say it has a pretty simple but I think well done plot. I mean, if you watch the trailer, you can figure out it's a revenge story type of thing.
Right.
But I feel like they handled it real well.
Gotta find out who killed my grandpa.
You kind of have to do that with a movie, right? Because like you only have so much time, to work on it. And I thought the character stuff as well, because they gave you what you needed for the main girls, and you know the other girls I think got an appropriate amount of screen time for their roles.
Yeah. It felt like at the very least at one point that there was like an episode missing, like an episode length chunk of time for like the main girl and this like the quiet girl with the electric powers to like get to know each other better.
My understanding is that Black Fox kind of went through a, like, to use references I'm familiar with, a Gundam F91-esque production that was originally slated to be a television series, correct? But then
that's what I've heard.
They cut it up into a movie after like some production issues happened.
I think so. I actually don't agree. I don't think I wanted an extra episode in there for the amount of content that they gave us. But I also like things a bit faster paced, so I don't know. But the what I would say is they very much could and should continue to do a TV series off of this after the end of the movie.
Oh yeah, I think
so.
Do it. Yeah,
standalone with sequel potential.
It's explicitly set up for that. Mm-hmm. So I think rather than try to cram an entire 12 episodes of content into 90 minutes, they more said this is the portion of the story that we can tell in the amount of time we have, and they focused on it. That's what it felt like to me. Mm-hmm. So it did not feel as rushed or chopped up as like a your average anime compilation movie to me. It still felt like it was like made, like directed and paced and everything like a movie, and not just like assuming you have prior knowledge or
they're gonna do a Kickstarter for Black Fox 2 and then 2 years later put Black Fox TV on Netflix.
Like for the majority of the movie, I would agree with you. I just think that like you have that section that they gave as like a preview on Crunchyroll, and like it even had me fooled thinking that it was just an episode of a regular show. And then like it cuts from that straight to like the home life with the girl being in the detective agency. It definitely clearly seems like there's something
I don't think he needed anything in between there. I mean, you probably could have, but I feel like your brain fills in the blanks on that one, and that's kind of the way I usually prefer it.
All right.
But yeah, I mean that just might be difference of opinion on that one, but
to keep things relatively spoiler free, I guess, for those of us who have not watched it. So this is my own personal taste, but I have always been the outlier on this blog, I think, when it comes to 3 Hertz's body of work. just did not care for Flip Flappers, and Princess Principal's art style and like setting just totally put me off. I'm just not into that like Victorian steampunk bullshit. But would you say that Black Fox, like, is it more within the kind of that 3 Hertz like style and body of work, or would you say this is kind of like doing something perhaps more appealing
it's still
or different?
Like teenage girls, going around fighting and stuff. Like, I don't think that
Right, which is like
changed.
something that theoretically I should enjoy. But...
I think you would enjoy this setting more, G, because it's like
I
not
would
too
agree.
distant future robots and stuff. It's robots and ninjas. I mean, come on, everybody loves robots and ninjas. But,
yeah, I mean, as we all know of Trigger Darling show, Ninja Slayer had ninjas and robots.
So
Yeah, that's true.
So,
we still haven't finished that.
I think for your personal taste, G, this would probably be your best bet out of those 3 things from this studio. But yeah, I just thought it was really solid, and I hope that I hope that we get more. I'm doubtful if anybody actually watched this or cares enough.
I mean, the fact that it's airing on Crunchyroll has. I mean,
that's like the important part to me here is I hope this means more movies will get on Crunchyroll
that
within
would be
reasonable
nice.
time frames.
Yeah, because I mean, like that's a thing, right? Is like if this thing got a theater run like Promare did, we would be talking about like you guys seeing this in. I mean, I don't know if this movie would even rate to get an American theater run, right? So we would be talking about waiting until this thing got Blu-rays.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like shown
speaking of
like an
real
obscure
quick,
convention or something like that.
Yeah. Real quick service announcement. I'm sure people already know this, but G Kids actually announced that they are doing an extra run of Promare showings in America. I think they said they're scheduled for December. So if you haven't had a chance to see that movie yet, like, you got one more chance, I guess.
Good.
Yeah.
It's
and
fun.
you don't even have to try that hard for Black Fox. It is on Crunchyroll. Like,
right. This one is just straight up on Black Fox, right? So like that's
please
Crunchyroll.
Yeah,
please go check that out.
I still enjoyed the action. I think it was overall a good experience.
Yeah.
Well, again, yeah, because it's on Crunchyroll, it's a lot more
hear it.
accessible, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So
3 Hertz still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Still in it.
All right. So let's move along, and we'll start talking about the TV shows.
And we're going to start off on a strong note here.
Yeah, I want to get these out of the way first. We're gonna
All right.
revisit.
I'm using my crystals. I'm rolling.
Yeah, we're gonna revisit Gacha Hell because we had 3 of the most popular Gacha games getting
Pulling the
animated
wheel.
this season. Yeah, so pull the wheel, Pyro. And what's the first? What did you roll?
It's Azure Lane.
Damn it!
And
how does Azure Lane rate as a gacha?
Another 1-star poll.
I was like, if you pulled Azure Lane in the gacha game, gacha.
I mean,
it's got to be 1 star, right?
It'd be like a 1 or 2 star, but be really popular because the design is like
Because it's
It's
very
literally
cheap design.
a copy of another gacha that already
This
exists.
is like Type 64 and Girls Frontline having like 5 costumes, whereas like some of the 5-star gun girls don't even have 1 costume.
yeah. Anyway, as far as the anime goes, it's if whatever you love or hate about Azure Lane is well represented here. So you've got I was actually pleased, like the action, there's like an 11-minute battle of like nonstop action, and it was pretty fun. They fight an aircraft carrier wolf. One of the girls gets shot in the chest with a energy bow and arrow at point blank range. There's some fun stuff in there, but it's kind of counterbalanced by the horrible character designs and sexualizing little girls, which Azure Lane is pretty high on the horny scale as far as gacha games go. There's lots of clothes falling off and whatnot, and I saw clips of the second episode that are even worse.
I feel like for me, it's like, yes, like the skeevy designs are definitely one reason it is off-putting, but I feel like it's actually the other thing you mentioned, Jill, that really puts me off about Azure Lane, and it's like, the character designs in that game / anime are just not good, like, at all. It almost gets back to like when I was ranting about Demon Slayer's character designs, where it's like, on one hand, it can be offensive because of like the skeeviness of the outfits, but for me, I almost just find it more off-putting because of like just I don't know how unappealing the designs are. Period.
Yeah. So the anime, I mean, unless you like Azure Lane, there's no point to watch it, and it's probably bad. But I do have a story to go with this.
Okay.
Do tell.
So long time listeners may know that I have very good gacha game luck, right?
Uh-huh.
So I was watching Azure Lane, and the big pivotal battle, the Azure Lane cover girl is USS Enterprise, who shows up and kicks everyone's ass, right?
That is fitting.
So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try something. I'm going to open Azure Lane, which I don't play, and I haven't touched in like a year and a half. I played it for like a week when it came out, and then realized it's terrible. Well, the game's good, but I hate the designs and everything, like we said. Anyway, point is, I was like, let me see if I can roll Enterprise right now with my free rolls that I have from not playing from a year. So I had about, and you guys know where this is going, right? But like, I had about 30 rolls. How many rolls do you think it took for me to get Enterprise?
Guys, precisely one.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't quite that, but I did, like within, I think it was like 4 or 5 rolls. I rolled Enterprise, who is like the rarest, like, you know, whatever. I forget how many stars Azure Lane goes by.
But the top tier waifu.
Yeah, like she's the picture on the icon and all the loading screens and everything.
What is it, Catalina or whatever her name is?
I used all those gems. I still didn't get Saber.
Yeah, so just so everyone knows, the gacha luck is still there.
I gotta say, Jel, ever since you stopped playing Girls Frontline, my luck in Girls Frontline has notably increased, actually.
Oh, okay. I'm not
like,
just
A zero-sum game there.
All right.
I think there might actually be a zero-sum game at work here in our gacha enjoyment, because like they released some new dolls lately, and like people were moaning about, oh man, the new doll they released, like they heard horror stories about how on the China server it has like the lowest drop rate of any doll released so far, and like I got it in like less than 30 contracts, which like in the scope of Girls Frontline is pretty good.
Yeah, because you burn through the like those a lot more.
All right, Jel, with your gacha luck,
into this stuff.
Jel, with your gacha luck, I think you need to make the next roll for what's coming up next.
Okay, well, let's see. Haha, yes. Grand Blue Fantasy, an actual good, a 5-star SSR.
You son of a bitch.
Game.
I'll play that fighting game.
So, unfortunately, though, the anime, not so much.
Oh, no.
Well, so this is season 2, of course, of Grand Blue Fantasy, the animation, and the big story being this: they switched over from A1 Pictures to Mappa, and it was not. It was very disappointing because the first season looks fantastic. If there's anything you can say about it, the art direction and the animation and just like the overall quality is just top notch in season 1.
Yeah, for sure.
And season 2, I would generously say, is above average looking.
Yes, but when we're talking about Grand Blue Fantasy and like the standard that thing has established for itself.
Yes. So for any other anime, it'd be like, okay, this is fine. But for this series, it's real disappointing. If you look at my post, I actually linked like the side-by-side little clips of kind of similar action scenes, and it's like no comparison.
Is like Cygames just finally running out of money? Because it seems like all of their shows have always been pretty
it's because
funded, right?
it's gonna sell gangbusters no matter what they do. So
yes. I think cynically what Eero said is correct.
Yeah, but
that's kind of what we theorized.
A bunch of money into other stuff, right? Like they had Bahamut, they had that Dragon Girl.
Well,
yeah,
I think
those weren't to the level of quality. They were similar level of quality to this, as opposed to the first. If you go back and look at like again, if you look at the side by side comparison, it's like not even close. The first anime just looks amazing.
Okay.
And I think I'm on board with that conspiracy theory now, in that they figured, well, we're gonna, and Mappa probably even gives Cygames the family discount at this point, but I think they were like, this thing is gonna sell anyway, we're gonna have our pack-in bonuses, so idiots like me buy the Blu-rays. I don't think I'm actually gonna do that, but buy the Blu-rays for the special exclusive characters that come with them, and it's not gonna matter what the anime content actually is. So that's a very cynical take, but it makes a lot more sense than them saying they're running out of money, because I think Cygames is doing quite well.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
I would go on to argue that probably the reality of it is that Grand Blue Fantasy can just get by on sheer inertia at this point, whereas back when they were doing stuff like, Rage of Bahamut, they had a lot of money to burn, but they also needed to, like, at least at the time, push that as a viable big name franchise. But
Right.
Now that they have an established name in the form of Grand Blue,
they can afford to coast.
Yeah, and I mean, that's not to say that they can always coast. I imagine for better or worse, that Grand Blue fighting game that Arxis is making is probably going to be a pretty high quality product,
Yes.
But that's because it's kind of a different medium, and in at least video games, if you half-ass a video game, you get skewered a lot more easily than in an anime.
And the Grand Blue, the game, continues to be top notch, but it's a whole lot cheaper to make that top notch versus making top notch anime. So,
I don't know if you've seen how much Mappa pays their animators.
Well, that's why they switched to Mappa, right? But yeah.
Well, also cynically, I'm going to say that maybe I'm okay with Mappa half-assing Grand Blue if it means that they're just devoting more of that money to next year's.
They're full-assing Dorohedoro.
Yes. If they are
full-assing,
no, that's Wit Studio.
Oh, that's Wit. I always mix them up.
Yes. But as Eero so correctly stole my bit, yes, hopefully they are whole-assing that Dorohedoro anime that is coming next year.
Oh, right.
Yes, so we'll save that for another day. But yes.
Oh yes, don't worry, I will leave it at that.
All right, one last roll.
One more roll.
Slot machine. It's shit. It's fake. It's fake Grand Order, Absolute Demonic Front, Babylonia.
Man, I didn't even know that Zero Stars existed.
Grand Order I've rolled today.
What a crappy roll.
So
it's such a popular character.
We've spent some time on this already, but now that officially episode 1 has come out, how are we?
So 2 has come out by now.
2 by now. Okay.
How much butts are in that one? You think?
Slightly less. There's slightly more crotch.
Oh, what?
Okay. Flip the camera around. All right.
Okay.
Just, I don't like Grand Order.
Look, I feel like we already said it perfectly in our post that you can read on theglorioblog.com. Fate Go is bad for all the reasons that El Melee II is good.
Yep.
It's as simple as that, really.
Also, I was
throw it in the trash.
So because of stuff in the preview, and because I was not fully aware of the actual plot of Fate Grand Order, Absolute Demonic Front, Babylonia, when some lower source servants appeared in the trailer, I assumed that was because they would be what it is they're part of the story of Absolute Demonic Front, Babylonia. They're not summoned by the main character as to be used. Whereas if you're playing the game up to this point, you have your team of servants or whatever, and your gacha backlog of dudes. But plot wise, it's just MASH, and the story help servants that you can summon for free. And so it's me realizing, they're not gonna have all those other dudes show up for one scene or whatever. It's just the plot by itself was this is gonna be even worse than I thought.
Oh yeah.
They're not acknowledging the. I mean, I wasn't expecting them to be rolling the gacha in this particular format, but
maybe they
not
should.
acknowledging the collection of heroes.
Yeah, I mean, Gel, to kind of bring this back to Grand Blue, I don't know about the second season, but I remember you mentioning that at the end of season 1 of the Grand Blue anime, right? They did their obligatory. All the cool fan favorite characters show up in the last episode to
help
do
fight
something
the final
cool,
boss.
right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. They get their little scene, and it's
everybody gets their 5 seconds of opening tier animation,
right?
But
they might still do that here, but
right. I'm sure that Fate Go will probably do something along those lines. But I think that for better or worse, it seems to me Fate Go is not even leveraging whatever rare, unique advantages a gacha game adaptation might have.
If even Ash Ketchum can use other Pokemon besides Pikachu.
Yeah, I was going to say, even in the
fucking Ritsuka could use other servants than MASH.
Right.
even in like the game, like I've played enough Fate Go to know like how the story works. Like in the story, like they like the main character has other servants to summon besides Mash. Like it's not like it's weird.
It's just not fun.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the thing. We could go about this all day, but I think we, again, I would recommend reading our post on the GLORIO blog, because I think that we kind of, everybody who posts that really gets to the core of it, which is just that Fate Go it makes the Fate universe less fun, right? Yeah. It narrows the scope of the setting. The more it explains, the less interesting the world actually becomes, and I think Fate Go is like the anime specifically is endemic of that, right? It's everything that we fear about what's happened to that setting ever since that game got as popular as it did.
Right.
This is also a small thing, but it really annoys me that they're in Babylonia, but the group is called Chaldea, and that's just another name for Babylonia.
Don't think too hard about that, my guy. I mean, this is their seventh. What the fuck are they even called? They're
seventh singularity.
Singularity, right? They fucking went to fucking Avalon last week or some shit.
Right, yeah,
a lot. Yeah.
Say no more.
Don't think too hard about that.
Let's move on from the gacha games then and get to our main body of shows here. And
sure thing.
Fine.
Move on to something else I can get pissed off about.
Yay!
I'm curious why you decided to even include this one in the lineup.
I think it's an interesting conversation. But the first one we're going to talk about is Oreski. I forget what that stands for, but the full title is "Are You the Only One Who Loves Me?" This was the show that Aqua accused me of possibly liking. When
you're just here to defend yourself, essentially.
Well, not necessarily, but I do want to talk about. So like, the thing is that this show could have been good, as is going to be the case with I think of many of these shows we're going to talk about today. But because like the concept is, it was actually pretty funny. Like the first part of the episode, they like play completely straight. They could play it like a mid-2000s visual novel romance thing with these two girls that like him. And it leads up to this big confession, and everything has like this like beautiful sunlight on everything, and everyone is like all nice and everything. And it goes to the big confession with one of the girls, and the girl goes to confess and says, "I'm actually in love with your best friend. Can you help me hook up with him?" And then so that's like the twist, and then like they rub it in with the next girl. They like actually go almost line for line the exact same dialogue scene where she says the exact same thing, and it's actually like the way they do it and everything is kind of funny. I'm like, okay, this could actually be a pretty funny premise for a romantic comedy or whatever. And then they go and shoot themselves in the foot with the next day, like all the lighting has changed and everything, which is still pretty funny. But then it turns out that the main guy is just like an insufferable asshole. He's like, he gives this whole speech about how like these women toyed with his innocent, delicate heart, even though he was the one that was like putting on an act to try to.
Does he also have a shield?
Yeah, no, I would not put this in the same stratosphere as Shield Hero, but it's kind of moving in that general direction of
the thing that it sounds like in the post that you wrote on theglorioblog.com, where you can read all of our first look posts.
Yes,
is that it kind of dovetails into full on like incel revenge like drama territory.
There's a little, there's a little bit of that. He's not really. Again, like I wouldn't put it quite in that category with Shield Hero, where it's like seriously taking it seriously, because like the show still kind of wants you to think he's a jerk, but he also wants everybody to like. They also want the audience to sympathize with him in the I guess the sense of we're all jerks or whatever. Because there's literally one shot where after the confession, everything. The girls are still being friends with him because they were friends, like
sure.
normal human
Is
beings.
he like, how dare they?
Yeah, and then, like one shot, he's like the camera actually, like the scene actually freezes, and he looks at the camera and he's like, "Oh well, she doesn't even like me, and she's being nice to me. Isn't that weird, guys? Am I right?" Like,
boy.
Yeah, okay. and so the show still is still kind of saying he's a jerk, but again, they're kind of saying, but we're all jerks, aren't we? I'm like, no, we're not.
I guess that's a problem, right? Like, if his shitty behavior is meant to be the butt of the joke, I think that can work. But if he's also still meant to be sympathized with, I think that dilutes that. Like,
well, that's where we get the final twist here. Is there's a third girl who's this weird girl that hangs out in the library who's been stalking him, and she's actually loves when he acts like a jerk, because that's him showing his true self or whatever. And like,
I mean,
the message of the show is supposed to be like,
be yourself.
Oh, be yourself. That's when you're your most attractive or whatever. But the problem is when you're, which that's somewhat true, but when your real self is an asshole, then that's what the problem is.
Just
That's kind of
real, huh?
Torpedoes the show's premise.
I feel like the thing that I keep thinking back to whenever I hear about these anime with these kind of premises is like, why didn't all of y'all just read Onani Master Kurosawa?
I was thinking,
Hey, I did.
Like,
Fucking on it, man.
you know, like if you want
people here have read that.
Yes, and I say y'all. I didn't mean you people. I meant like y'all, the collective y'all
I know.
of the greater consciousness of fandom. Like if
that was also like 20 years ago or something.
or not even y'all, as in you guys. I meant the writers themselves. Like, if you want to learn how to write a good, compelling, misanthropic character who is forced to confront his own inadequacies and struggle to become a better person, like, motherfucker, the textbook on this was written, yes, like 10, 20 years ago.
And they already made Snafu too, so pretty much all the like jerk with
I think that there would be a pathway to success for this show if that was like the direction. If they were going to make the guy confront his attitude and actually learn and grow as a person, that might actually be okay. But I have like zero faith.
Although, like, doesn't
right.
like if I remember, like it's been a while, but doesn't Onani Master kind of start with him being a total jerk, and it's not until he has to face the consequences
totally. No.
Because like.
I mean, that's
this
the thing.
Character hasn't faced consequences or done anything worth facing consequences outwardly.
I guess that is a good point, right? Like, based on what you're describing here, Jell, the protagonist has mostly kept these thoughts to himself, I assume. Like, he's not acting out on these actions, I guess, which I guess that puts it into a murkier territory because we know he's a piece of shit, but, like, he hasn't actually done anything worth being criticized for, I guess.
What his next plan is he's figuring, I'll help these girls hook up with my friend, but there's still going to be one of them left that I can hook up with. Which I don't think that's going to happen because the show's going to hook him up with the weird girl in the library.
Right.
But that's what his next plan of action is. So he hasn't had an opportunity to do that in the first episode, which is all I watched. But that's like the next step. So yeah.
Man, this is messed up. Like the more I think about it, the more messed up it is. Like, so he was intentionally hitting on both of them, and like,
he was gonna see which one sticks, basically,
like,
and then
terrible.
What he's basically playing Descartes' like theorem of chances, basically. Like, if I'm just nice to both of them, then at least one of them will work out in the end.
Right, and that's even reinforcing the whole concept of if you're just nice to a girl, then they're going to want to have sex with you.
Right.
But
well, Jim, I'm sure you'll watch all of this, so do feel free to report.
No, I'm done. I'm done with this one. I just wanted to put it because I do feel like
as much.
I do feel like there was the right pieces there to put together a pretty good like dumb comedy that I would enjoy, and they blew it.
Well,
well.
Speaking of shows, we're going to watch all of.
Yeah,
I was going to say, speaking of things with parts that you guys would enjoy, but they blew it.
That too.
Let's talk about the next iteration of Gundam Build Divers.
Yes.
I don't know what the actual title
Build
is.
Divers Re-Rise.
What?
On this one. Okay.
the next entry in the venerable Gundam franchise.
Okay.
Gundam Build Divers Re-Rise. Okay. The next entry in the venerable Gundam franchise.
Okay.
The next entry in the venerable Gundam franchise.
I take it this did not go
No,
well.
it didn't.
No. Look, we're not. Don't take our reactions to be like a sign of surprise. We knew this going in.
Yeah, we
Like,
did.
yeah.
We absolutely did. This would suck.
after Try and Divers, my faith in the Gundam Build Fighters like overall umbrella franchise has been thoroughly ground into dust.
Yeah.
There's no hope left in me for this franchise. But so yeah, it's just, if we want to just get into it, Gundam Build Divers sequel or like pseudo sequel to the first Gundam Build Divers, where they gunpla battle in a big like Sword Art Online virtual reality MMO. The biggest problem with Divers Re-Rise that is kind of similar to the problems of the original Divers is that Build Divers once again, or Re-Rise once again, makes no effort to really leverage its unique premise and strengths. I think there's an idea here that, like, actually a Gundam fighting based MMO is not a terrible idea. There are actually some fun things you can do with that. And instead, Re-Rise has decided to pivot Gundam into an isekai anime of sorts.
What?
Of course.
Right. So it's like the plot is it's the new update, and we're doing this hidden quest that has nothing to actually do with Gundam. It's about this village of animal people being attacked by evil mechs, and it's like, why have this whole plot thread about these virtual animal people being attacked by evil robots as your plot when it being a Gundam-based MMO and you could be your plot? There's so much potential for
Right, I mean, literally
and stuff that
literally in the first 2 minutes, of the first episode of Gundam Build Divers, do the thing that me and Iro have been begging this show to do for an entire season.
Do like
the first 2 minutes
standing mission or something.
Yes, the last 2 minutes are the end of what seems to be like a Gundam battle royale mode, right, where 100 Gundams enter and one leaves, and it's kind of neat. And then we quickly realize, oh no, that's not going to be the focus of this show at all. And it's just like all the neat things you think about with like online gaming and MMOs. Like it's the thing that once again it feels like even within the already low bar that exists for anime about MMOs, Gundam Build Divers does not even like leverage any of the strengths that can be found there, like playing games and instanced like zones or raids or battle royales or what have you, all the things that are associated with like what makes online gaming interesting. And so yes, the focus on this like weird like
Isekai
seven
thing.
samurai ass plot, except with like mechs and furries, is it's a weird thing to focus on. It's I don't know, and the characters themselves are not that interesting. Like, the most interesting thing that can be said about the new cast is, like, none of them knew each other prior to meeting. So, like, there is no, like, established status quo with these characters.
The girl pilots the Tournay robot.
Yes.
One with the
The one in... Yeah, the one and only lady pilot. What? Wait, what? With the cockpit? Oh, you're talking about Tournay. No. She's piloting what is known in a Wadam, which was another suit in Turn A designed by Sid Mead.
Okay.
Which means that she is piloting like the deepest cut and all deep cuts, and like she is also like the second most competent like character on the team, which is neat because like women in Gundam are usually relegated to either dying to motivate the hero or doing
our previous Kamen Rider conversation.
yes, or doing nothing at all. And so that's cool.
Being like the semi-final villain.
Sure, yes, that is yes. Being a crazy hysterical villain is also another popular trope for women in Gundam anime. But yeah, I don't know. There's not really much else to say about.
I think there was one joke I thought was funny, which is when they do a mission. They'll like have to register their guild name or whatever.
Oh,
and it defaults to Build Divers, and they're like, "Oh man, we can't call ourselves Build Divers because that's what the legendary guild from last season was called. They're called Build Divers. We can't do that." And so the girl just changes the capital I to a lowercase I. It's a
Oh yes, yes,
it's a
that's
different
very
game.
good. Yes, right. It is very. That is one part that feels very MMO in the sense of like, you know, I'm Goku. I'm Goku 69. I'm like Dark Goku
Sex Naruto
420.
effect.
Goku with random
Like-
little capital
Right.
letters.
Right, Goku with a 0, Goku with 2 U's. So yes, them replacing
Batman
the
with
I
a
with a
4 instead of an
lowercase.
A. Like,
Yes, was the part that felt the most
Man.
like believably MMO to
Give
me.
me late 90s
But,
flashbacks.
Yeah, but yeah, just otherwise, like the Gundam fights themselves are not that great, and we haven't had a lot of really good deep cuts yet. Like the deepest cut is arguably that the main mooks they're fighting are the Dark Army grunts from G Gundam, like the Cyclops dudes with the clubs.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Does Master Ace
But,
show up?
No,
Oh.
no,
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 we're
no.
talking
If
about-
Master Ace just showed up, this would be a much different show.
Man, it would,
But yeah.
All right. Well, you guys are still going to tough it out, though, huh?
Uh-huh.
Yes. What else is there to say?
the longest pilgrimage to Mecca.
Yes.
It never ends, man.
All right.
Right. Being part of the Mecha faithful means taking the good times with the bad. So
Well, we'll
The
check
Master
back in on that
Trials
as needed
Master
then.
taketh away.
yes.
All right. Well, I threw that in between shows here to give me a break before I go on another rant here.
Uh-huh.
Boy.
Oh, I've seen a couple screenshots from this.
Yeah, this is
My feelings,
Yeah.
my feelings on this show are similar to how I felt about Oriski, except I was actually looking forward to this one.
I thought
Oh
it was
no,
going to be bad.
Kel, that's the first mistake you made.
Yeah, I did. I guess that was my biggest mistake, was getting my hopes up. But we're talking about what we were calling previously Kabukicho Sherlock, which has bin officially titled by Funimation in English as Case File Number 221 Kabukicho, which is much worse. So this was like going to be the murder mystery comedy thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And Marlon, did you watch it?
I watched it too, yeah.
I mean,
Okay,
the idea
so
of a
it was real
modern
bad.
day Sherlock Holmes and Kabukicho sounds great.
Yes.
I
Like, you don't
So-
even know he's
Judgment.
Sherlock Holmes until like 10 minutes or like 5 minutes in.
Oh, that's the least of our problems.
It is.
But yes. So let me just at the offset just say, I feel like if you're going to do black humor as a murder comedy would be,
Mhm.
you should probably leave the dark stuff more to the imagination
Right.
and focus more on the comedy.
Oh.
Whereas this is more of like a murder mystery with some wacky characters in it.
Yeah.
And by murder mystery, I mean like it's literally Sherlock Holmes. Like they meet Sherlock Holmes and the main character is Watson and they're
Right.
solving murders. So like and there's a couple other detectives who I think are also famous detectives that are like side characters.
I have
but-
no idea. But yeah.
But like it literally goes through the motions of a murder mystery thing, which to me is super boring and way overdone. I had no enjoyment out of that. So that aspect of it just made it boring. There were a few silly bits like Sherlock giving his explanation in Rakugo, which was pretty good, I guess. But the even that didn't really pan out. It was so.
It's just
So
like a
right
stream of
away-
consciousness the whole time
Yeah.
of like nothing good though. Just like,
Yeah.
just
So right away it was just kind of boring at base level, and then they had a couple other ways they were shooting themselves in the foot, like some casual homophobia.
mhm.
There are one of the main characters is a person with a beard and wears sexy clothes and comes on to everybody, and that goes about as well as you might expect. But the I think one of the main things that bothered me was just like how casually they handled the murder part. And I don't know if Marlon you felt
Yeah.
the same way on this, but like the first murder is and this is tying back around to my original point about the black humor stuff. Like the first murder is supposed to be like supposedly done by Jack the Ripper, and in Jack the Ripper style, they find the body of this woman in her underwear with her genitals cut out.
Mhm.
And they drew like
That don't
wings of,
sound good.
they drew like
No.
wings with blood like on the floor around her and stuff like that. And this is supposed like that specifically isn't supposed to be funny, but like they actually show like the body laying there with her like covering herself with blood all over the place. Like
I feel like if you want to do a murder comedy, like the murder methods have to be comical.
Right. Yeah.
This was
like
not
Monk
funny
or
at all.
Or
And,
like it
or at
just
the very
needs to-
least off screen, like you said.
Yes.
and it kind of culminates in when Sherlock is recounting that when he confronts the criminal and is recounting what happened, they're like showing the montage of what happened in the background over like funny jazzy music.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, and then he took her over here and tried to rape her and killed her, and it's
Right.
showing the guy trying to rape her and kill her in the background with funny music playing. I'm like, no, that's not how you do this. That's not
Yeah.
funny. It made me very uncomfortable.
I think
And
it sounds like I think the thing with black comedy, right, is that it's actually pretty hard to pull off, right? Like I think
it's
everybody
very
thinks,
hard to do.
black comedy, you just edgy, but just make it as edgy as possible, but laugh about it. But
Right.
I think that it's actually like you have to very carefully balance like the black with the comedy, right? And it sounds like this is not doing a great job of balancing those.
It also just had completely terrible like scene progression. Like it just jumped from one thing to another. There wasn't I mean, I guess maybe they were trying to make jokes in how ridiculous it all was, but like, there's this one scene where like they're trying to like get to the criminal, and then he runs over Sherlock Holmes, and then he goes into a hospital, and it's like,
Okay,
why?
sure.
Why?
Oh, they had to make one more joke at the end about him needing Watson to help him pee. But
oh yeah, I guess that's true. But
Okay.
but also like when he first gets his car, he like Sherlock Holmes's car doesn't work, and it's being like, oh, Sherlock Holmes is so eccentric, he doesn't know what to do. But then Watson drives up and says, I fixed your car for you, but it's like implying that he somehow left his keys in the car, and also that Watson decided to steal his car but then drive it up to, like, there's just all this stuff that just doesn't make any sense. And
it was not well directed.
Yeah,
no. Like things
very
did not
badly
flow.
directed.
Things did not flow nicely into scene after scene or whatever. So that did not help either.
Yeah,
for sure.
It was bad.
But yeah, it just again. I feel like they could have made something pretty entertaining out of this, and they just blew it again here. So, all right. I think most of the stuff we're going to talk about from here on is at least pretty good.
Yeah, I would say so. I think these
So
are
let's move into some more positive territory.
the supposed cream of the crop of this season.
Yes, and let's talk about Stars Align.
Mm-hmm. I enjoyed this quite a bit.
Yeah. I think we had reasonable expectations.
I
for this.
had no idea what this was going
Me
in.
neither.
Yeah,
Soft
this
tennis
is the
like just made me think of that one show where that's not about soft tennis at all. I forget what it's called.
Yeah, there's been a few. There's literally one called Soft Tennis, I think, and then there's that. I think you're talking about like TQ or something.
TQ.
Like that.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is it's a sports anime that is kind of focused more on like kind of grounded reality. So there's no snake shots here, but it's I thought it was pretty good. The writing and the acting is pretty good. There's a level of realism to the characters and their situations that I think is a step above your typical high school anime stuff. There are characters dealing with some serious problems, which I think we'll talk about more in a minute. But overall, I really liked it. I think the way they're integrating the sports into it is seems to be pretty good so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. I want to get your guys' kind of impressions first before I get more into the ending. But what did you guys think?
Nah, I enjoyed it. Yeah, like it's giving me a bit more of like it. Like we were talking about whether or not this would be whether or not we could rate this among ping pong level anime, and I don't think we're quite there yet. But I can see where,
yes.
I could see where it at least has the potential to be a good show. and like there's a little bit too much shown, I think, at the end in the thing that you're talking about, but sometimes you have to show, play your hand in order to get the audience hooked. So I generally think that the characters are well written, that everything was paced pretty well, and I generally liked the story.
G, you want to go?
Oh, sure. Okay. I was not as sold on it maybe as the rest of you guys, at least initially. I think that I personally think that I think maybe some people are overrating this show a bit, because if I'm being frank, I think just some of these people who are rating it so highly just have not watched a lot of other sports anime. But because I think on some level, a lot of what Stars Align is doing is actually like fairly within expectation of other sports stories. The way I would like I guess the thing I hear a lot is, oh, like sports Stars Align is like, oh, this is a sports anime about real people with real problems. But I think, as Marlin kind of alluded to before with Ping Pong, I think good sports anime have always been about the people, right? Like, obviously you have your Prince of Tennis's and your very like over the top sports, anime. They're very focused on the sports. I'm sorry, Marlin, I interrupted you.
Well, it is interesting. I find that like the motivation is much lower than your normal sports anime. Like, they just need to win a game.
Right, but
and like, so it'll be interesting at the very least to see where they get motivation to actually like compete, or if they ever get the motivation to compete, because they have these ulterior motives that don't really contribute to that.
And so far, I would actually say that is probably the thing that is keeping me invested in Stars Align, is that I think the motivations of the characters are actually what make this stand out. Because I'd say that a lot of the other stuff about Stars Align, of like the failing club, the scrappy captain, the reluctant ace protagonist, a lot of these things, like a lot of these things are actually pretty common to sports anime, but it's the motivation and the lengths that these characters are willing to go to that I think make it more interesting, right? It's the captain literally paying the protagonist to join the team, the protagonist joining by what looks so far to be out of purely financial motivation because of things we see at the end of this episode. I think those are the things that make it interesting. But I think that the sports anime parts of it have not really impressed me yet, in the way that, like, I think with like the first episode of Ping Pong, we immediately realize, oh, this is both going to be a very good sports anime, but also a very good character piece. Whereas with Stars Align, I'm interested in the characters, but I don't think the sports part is actually doing that great of a job of drawing me in.
So I would just throw this out there. When you get people saying, oh, it's a sports anime but focused on human drama or whatever, I would not say that that's a new thing, but would you say that's more of an exception than the rule when you compare to, like, I mean, we're referencing Ping Pong, which was like 5 years ago. I know, like, I think Big Windup came up in discussion, so that was like 10 years ago. Like, is this a thing we're only going to get like once every 5 years in between like all the other generic even this season we had like that generic basketball show that we didn't even bother covering.
I actually did watch an episode of that.
One.
So
what was it called again?
Hanabado?
Yeah, there was Hanabado. I don't know where I would put that
for a lot of other reasons.
I don't know where I would put that on the spectrum
level, but I think it's got the same it had a good.
I think those are less common than the snake shot. Either the snake shot shows or the cute boy bait shows.
Right.
I would agree, Joe. I agree with your premise. I would definitely say that these shows are uncommon. But I think I would still argue that at the core of most good sports anime is that you have to care about the characters, because if you just care about like the presentation of good sports, like you could just go watch real sports essentially, right? Like,
sure.
But, or hell, even as like some of you guys here who do watch real sports can attest, why do you like watching sports? Why do you root for a certain team, right? There is an investment in it, and so even when the characters are not as well developed as like what Stars Align seems to be angling for, you don't care about I hope X team is going to win the game. You say, I hope these characters who have all endured like various struggles, some personal, some related to the sport, and some entirely unrelated to the sport. I hope these characters whose struggles I have witnessed, I hope they win the game.
I mean, I
And
feel like Stars Line is doing that so far the first episode, at least.
Yeah, and I think
yes.
that's going to tie into the next part I want to get into, which is the ending, because I do think the ending, for better or worse, is not something that we see a lot of, which I'll throw up the spoiler flag here because I want to get into the actual details of it. But the final sequence of the episode is basically the main characters, who we've seen living alone with his mother. His father shows up and basically beats him, and it's very much on screen.
It's
kind of difficult to watch, to be honest. And I'm not going to say at this point whether or not this was a good or bad decision, because I think what they do with it from here is going to kind of determine whether it was worth being this explicit with the with what's happening. They're opening up a box here that they better be prepared to follow up with, because I swear to God, if they try to like rehab his dad or something or whatever, which very well could happen.
It doesn't seem like that kind of anime.
It doesn't. Yeah, but I've seen that happen in other anime though. Like even like say Hanebado, which like is a much less graphic example.
Right, but still attempted to rehabilitate maybe the worst mob of 2018. So.
Right.
Yeah. But like, so I feel like when shows do that, it's you usually can also tell that like
they're angling in that direction.
Right, that they're coming from an angle of they care but can't show it properly or something. Whereas
this dude is like straight up.
Right, this is showing depicting this guy as nothing more like nothing better than
an abuser.
Totally the worst.
This dude is like, I mean, I it was really hard to watch. I will agree with you guys there, but I could not help but like laugh internally to myself a bit, because this dude is so fucking like such a fucking piece of shit. He's almost like a villain out of a Yakuza sub-story.
Like it's a little cartoonish, his design and everything.
No, I'm not denying that. Like there are real people that are abusive like this, but it is such a harsh shift in tone.
Right.
And not to say that wasn't expected, right? Like I think the thing that this episode, like despite my earlier criticisms, I think the thing it does do well is it lays down a pretty initially subtle groundwork that things are not as friendly as they seem, right? Like right off the bat,
you can feel it. You can feel it bubbling underneath.
Yeah, right off the bat, there's the case that like the main character and his mom. It's just the main character and his mom, right? A single mother, and like so you already begin to ask: is the dad deceased? Is he gone? What happened here, right? And then. You have the captain who kind of spells out the backstory of, oh, no, they're divorced, which I don't know how common divorce rates are in Japan, but like considering, let's be real, how patriarchal of a society Japan is, I imagine that to even get a divorce to go through and for the mom to end up the winner, I bet the dad has to do some pretty ratchet shit for a Japanese court to side with the woman. And then you also have the captain himself, right? Like his family life seems contentious.
Yeah,
they didn't really explain what was up with that right now, right?
Right,
like
but I don't think they need to yet. But they're already kind of laying the groundwork that, like, okay, his relationship with his brother seems okay, but there's something going on between him and his mother that
is that his stepmom or something like that.
Yeah, and it's like, what is like? And it seems like it's a one-way thing, right? Like it doesn't seem like the captain is aware of it, but the mom is like, there is something she apparently deeply detests about her younger son, and what does that say about either her or the captain, right? Like,
right,
and like, what does it say about the captain's mindset that he's literally willing to pay a dude $400 to to save his like tennis club?
He lives in a separate house, as opposed to like the 11th floor of a tenement.
Yeah, and so there's already like some. Again, I think those like I think the sports part would have to really pick it up to impress me here, because otherwise I think what they're doing better here is definitely the character stuff. And I think that the abuse scene that comes at the end is a harsh twist, but like not entirely unexpected because of the groundwork they lay in the first like 15 minutes.
Right. Yeah, and like I think they can make something good out of this, and I think it's always good to bring attention to like real issues and not just like kind of gloss over, or present people with all these perfect lives and everything, which we often see in in school anime stories. But if you're gonna go there and go there that hard, you better know what you're doing. Is all I'm saying.
It's walking a tightrope. It's walking a very delicate tightrope, and I think we all want it to pull it off, but I think it definitely is still a thing that remains to be seen.
It's too early to say one way or the other. I'm just something to keep an eye on moving forward. So
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, because we actually just mentioned it, I'll keep this to a minute. I did watch the first episode of the other fucking anime this season with the word Sora in it. Ahiru no Sora.
That's the basketball one I was talking about? That's
the basketball one, yes. So I mainly only watched it because it has
pillows opening.
The pillows,
right?
Yes, the pillows do the opening. And I was like, well, I guess I have to watch this. And it's fine. I mean, if you want to talk about like what sports anime often is more often, it is usually along these lines where it is fine, it is kind of generic. I'd say that for better or worse, probably its greatest sin is just that the delinquents getting dragged into like playing a sport seriously is like a fairly common subplot. Like,
right.
Like I don't want to go into full like history of the sports anime genre here, but like between the like from the 80s until like the early 2000s, could almost argue the delinquents genre and the sports genre were almost maybe one and the same for a while.
Right.
Because like for some reason people just really loved reading stories about like down on their luck like punks and delinquents like
finding a purpose.
Yeah, finding a purpose, and that
Discipline
purpose usually being sports.
Sport.
Yeah. And like I mean the granddaddy of this of course is Slam Dunk. Like Slam Dunk is all about a like fucking shitty ass like punk deciding to play basketball, and kind of similar to like hell in a weird way similar to Stars Align, where I said like reluctant protagonist or protagonist who is joining for all the wrong reasons, right? Like in Slam Dunk, the protagonist joins because the basketball team manager is a hot chick, and that's literally the reason he joins the basketball team. So before like learning to love it genuinely.
Between of like two main sports anime this season, between Ahiro no Sora and Stars Align, which should people watch?
What people should watch is go to Crunchyroll, where Ping Pong is still there, and just watch that instead.
Yes, I was actually good. Yes, Marlin beat me to the bit. You should all watch Masaki Yuasa's 2013-14 darling.
14.
Yes, Ping Pong, which is still kind of holds, I think, the title for best sports anime of the decade. But of the two of these, I mean, I'm going to be real. Ahiro no Sora is a lot more generic. It is a lot more by the book. The characters in it they're likable enough. Like, they're, I can already see where they're going with this. I think the thing is just that it is much more well-worn territory. So to keep my attention, it's going to have to do, like, it is going to have to do that stuff much more impressively. Whereas with Stars Align, I think that the sports part of it is not that well done so far anyway, but the character stuff is interesting. I guess the reason for my criticisms against it is just I don't want people to get the idea that Stars Align is
like at some point that's a problem with Fairweather sports fans as opposed to a problem with the show, right?
Right. I don't want to imply that like it's mostly the show's fault. It's probably more just an issue of the discourse acting like Stars Align is walking on untrodden ground. But I would say that like yes, Fairweather fans acting like the flavor of the month is like revolutionary is nothing new. But yes, I would say overall I would still admit that I think Stars Align is probably the more interesting of the two, just because it is definitely doing something less common in the genre.
Right.
But damn, that Pillows opening is a real banger. So
I'll have to look up
is.
the opening. I'm not watching the show though.
yeah. At least
I'm
check out
surprised.
the opening.
Surprised the Pillows are still doing anime in 2019. But
Yeah.
anyway, let's move along to the latest in Amazon's. Please watch us because we only get violence.
Yeah,
And,
Amazon's
Yes,
slate of
the-
90s seinen or whatever. Like,
Right, the
Yeah.
Amazon violent seinen corner.
yeah. So let's talk about Blade of the Immortal,
Sure.
uh-huh.
which Iro and G you watched, right?
Yes.
How,
And I
how
watched
did that?
episode 2.
Okay.
Just
for some
episode 2?
Now, this is a series.
Just episode 2?
Yeah.
Wait,
Because
you
everyone
don't
was
fucking
crapping on
You don't
episode
get to
1.
fucking complain to me the story makes no sense if you only
No,
watch
I-
episode 2!
You should have watched episode 1, my guy.
I'm
Like,
just-
it's not a good first episode, but
I don't
It
think
makes
any of my
sense,
stuff
there's no
was like
sense, there's just one who's
strictly.
15, I don't get it, and I'm like, I don't understand why you don't get it.
No.
And now you're
It's not like I
telling
didn't get
me
anything about
you
the
didn't fucking watch
characters.
episode 1.
right, like when I saw you talking to the chat, I'm like, I don't really get what's going on. I was like, I don't understand where Marlin's coming from. But if you didn't even watch the,
Well, but
look,
you told me there was stuff in that episode that wasn't even like in the previous episode. So, like, I got enough context from reading all the stuff you guys wrote down.
I'm losing it over here.
I can't believe this.
All right, let's rein it in here
I know,
and
yeah. I'm sorry.
focus on. Let's focus on like how they actually pulled this off, because this is a older series that has gotten
It is something. Yes, it is.
adaptations before, and
Yes. Blade of the Immortal is definitely considered something of a seinen classic, and this adaptation was, like Vinland Saga, that is also still continuing this season, was kind of up against some pretty high expectations. And I think the general consensus that we got was like, the first episode is honestly kind of shaky, and I think a lot of this is that the first episode feels weirdly disjointed. Like, scenes kind of happen where you feel like there should have been an extra scene in between to like give it more context. And I think the other thing is that like I myself had to remember how fucking crazy Blade of the Immortal like actually gets. Like, I forgot. Like, for those of you who aren't familiar with the premise, basically it's about an immortal swordsman named Manji who essentially cannot die. He's got basically Wolverine powers. He can like regenerate, and he has to kill, I think it's like 1,000 evil men to make up for like the crimes he's committed in his life. And he teams up with this young girl, this young woman, who is trying to take out the like 104 bad sword guys who like killed her father.
Right.
And Manji gets dragged along for the ride. And so you kind of begin to already be like, oh, okay, I see where this is going.
Mhm.
And I think the problem is that like the first episode of Blade of the Immortal maybe takes itself a bit too seriously. Like, considering how fucking wacky some of these assassins
grim
get.
and violent and all that.
Yeah. And then the second episode happens, and
Even at the end of the first episode, you get the motherfuckers grafted women's heads onto his shoulders.
What?
right, yes. See, you should have watched the first episode.
Okay. I guess yeah.
But, so the idea is that all of these assassins are like all these like mega bad sword dudes are like hella fucked up in their own unique way. And like the idea is that it quickly becomes like a very like not wacky, because it is still a pretty grim, violent show, but like the second episode gets a lot more self-aware about it. Like,
so what are you telling me? This is like Sengoku era Kamui, Golden Kamui.
I would not. I don't. It does not get as light as Golden Kamui. Like, Golden Kamui is
Golden
very.
Kamui's pretty friggin' violent though.
Yes, but it is also pretty funny.
Okay,
I'd say if like Golden Kamui is like, like 60-40 violence to comedy, then Blade of the Immortal is more like 80-20 violence to comedy.
Okay.
Like, it is self-aware about how goofy some of these villains are, but it is still mostly focused on, blah, 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 the violence, samurais, the futility of revenge, etc., etc. Y'all know the score.
right.
But,
We start getting into like the Monster of the Week format of what
Yeah.
weirdo samurai is gonna try and kill them this time.
Right. And like just kind of how funny and kind of how messed up it is that like actually the majority of Manji's kills so far have not been because he is a superior swordsman in any regard, but just because the people he is fighting don't know he's immortal, so he
Right.
can just punk them by playing dead and then getting them from behind.
Yeah, I
Which
did notice
is-
that in the second episode.
It's a pretty good subversion, I guess. Like you'd expect, oh, this immortal dude must be a master swordsman, and like he's not
Turns out
bad, but it's
not
not like
dying is a good way to outlast somebody.
yes.
Right.
But
All right.
but yeah,
It's not. I would
So,
not
I
call
mean-
it's like super good. But I enjoyed
On a,
what I saw broadly.
I guess like on a scale of 0 to Ninja Scroll, how like 90s are we talking here? Is it like
oh, if we're talking about the original manga, that's like maybe only 1 point below Ninja Scroll.
but I mean, as far as like, does this feel like? Does it
it's
feel
so-
old? Did it not age well for 2019?
Sometimes it's like, all right.
yeah, yeah,
I thought,
it's
again, the
definitely built.
aforementioned guy who grafted women's heads onto his shoulders because he loves them and wants to be
Yeah.
with them forever.
It's pretty 90s. Yeah, like if you know what we're talking about, and I say 90s, I mean 90s manga, and people will know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that.
It's like hyper violent in
I'm surprised
Very
this
bizarre
isn't on
ways.
Netflix and they're trying to sell it as the hot.
well, like I've said before, this is kind of Amazon's.
Yeah.
This is like Amazon's thing where they said they're going to try to get this like
Mm-hmm.
dark, edgy, for adults only that sci-fi anime or sci-fi channel anime commercial.
Yes,
Not for kids anime.
Yes,
so
yes.
that's what they're doing.
Well-
If you're currently airing series are Blade of the Immortal and Vinland Saga, that's a lot
Yes.
of
Like-
people dying.
yes. Like all Amazon really needs now to complete the trifecta is to like greenlight a remake of Hellsing, and it will be complete.
Of maximum blood on screen.
Yes.
Okay. Well, are you guys gonna keep watching that one,
Probably
or
a couple more.
For now, I'd say yeah. Like if it were just the first episode, I think we would have dropped it. But the second episode,
Right, they dropped one and
managed
two
to,
simultaneously.
yes.
If it had only
And,
been
I-
episode 1 by itself, we would not have watched episode 2, I think.
No, definitely not. So for once, I think Amazon's choice to release a batch actually worked out in their favor.
right? Okay, so let's move along to two of our most hyped shows from previous episodes here, and let's talk about No Guns Life.
Sure.
I wanted to watch this, but ran out of time. So you guys are gonna have to carry
What do
me
you
on
think
this
about
one.
this one, Marlin? Did you
Oh, I
watch it?
really enjoyed it. Yeah, like it's kind of funny. My thoughts are now a little colored by reading that Kojima article, but I really do. It really is a very hard-boiled story. I like the characters so far. I mean, I'm a little put off by how
Man, speaking of that
movie it all
article,
is,
like,
but
Yeah, like take a fucking drink every time Kojima says the word hard boiled in that article.
you'd be
Like,
dead.
goddamn. Yes, but yes, continue.
Yeah, like it's very much a traditional like noir story that I it has this veneer of this sci-fi element that gives it a little bit of it's very anime in that way. The guy has a revolver for a head, so
Yes,
it's
yes.
got a very striking art style that I can get behind. I really enjoyed it for the most part. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of like Captain Underboob that showed up halfway through the episode.
Oh
and, like,
yeah, the fan service is a bit.
and the opening seems to show that that's not going to end anytime soon. So
Seinen is a genre of many
Sure.
many traits. I'm not going to try to defend it. You're right, but
I was
I will say. Oh, sorry, Eero. Go ahead.
I was enjoying it for some of the same reasons we were enjoying Copcraft last season, in that
Yeah,
we're like, we will pile on these genre cliches of
Yeah,
hardboiled, like noir detective man, but also like he's a fucking robot dude with a gun head. Like,
yeah,
yes.
like that
we
carries
will,
a
we will
lot. Like,
include the silly we will play these things so straight that the juxtaposition of those with everything else becomes silly.
Yeah,
That's, like, part
I
of
think
the
that's the way to
appeal,
put it.
yeah.
Yes, is that No Guns Life is. I mean, I think we've said it is this season's like popcorn anime. You know, it is. It's kind of big dumb fun. You
Mhm.
know, it's the kind of show where you can predict what the characters are about to say right before they say it. It's a show where the man has a revolver for a head and his official title is Resolver.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's it's dumb as hell, but it's really enjoyable. I think.
Punched a train.
It
That was cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
he punched a train with his gun fist that he has in addition to his gun head. The thing is that I've never actually known if No Guns Life is self-aware. Like, I've never read an interview with the author himself. I have no clue if he's actually aware of how fucking silly this all is, but for us and our enjoyment of the series, it feels like the show is aware of how ridiculous it is. I mean,
You would think so because
It
of
wouldn't
like
go
the
chibi for 2 seconds.
Right.
If it didn't. Right.
that's
yeah,
exactly what I was
think
going
that's
to
a good way
say.
to
Euro.
put it.
Yeah.
I think the author understands that, like, look, yes, it is a hard-boiled detective like pulp story, but also the man has a gun for a head. Like, don't sweat the details too much.
Right. Yeah.
How do you feel about the anime adaptation, like the quality compared to the source, the manga?
I think so far it's acceptable. I think it's all. No, that's being unfair. It's pretty decent. I think that so far they've done a pretty good job of kind of capturing the vibe of No Guns Life. You know, that very like smoky noir feel to it. I think that, as often is the case, it's never going to be able to quite emulate the manga because the manga just uses these huge splashes of black to kind of, you know, denote the tone, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
Right.
the things you can do in black and white with black and white art that you can't quite do with, like, you know, motion animation. But
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about that when we were talking about like Promise Neverland, right?
yeah, kind of a similar case.
It seems like they're trying to emulate that. Like, I've seen the trailers and stuff, like, to a certain
Right.
degree, like
If they've gone for the
black
proper
and
like noir color palette stuff.
Yeah.
right to the best they can in animated form.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And the soundtrack is very Kenji Kawai.
Mhm.
Yes. Like, there are parts where you hear those trumpets or whatever, or those
Right.
strings going, and you're like, oh, this is some Kenji Kawai shit right here.
Mhm.
It's probably appropriate for the setting, right? But all right. So I might actually check that out at some point once.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would
think
say-
we should. Yeah.
I would say don't go in with like too high expectations. Like, this is not a show that's gonna like be revelatory to you in any way. It's
Mhm.
very
I mean,
by
if
the book, but
if we're talking about shows where you can predict the dialogue, am I going to enjoy this more than I did Megalobox?
ooh, that's a hard call, honestly. If you didn't like Megalobox, I feel like
I think he'd still like
it-
this because it's different.
sure. I would still say it is also kind of built of a similar, like, not mold,
Megalobox
but
was not as overtly goofy, I think.
Right.
that's a good way to put it. Yes, that's true. I mean, that booby assassin attacks our hero with a fucking double-barreled revolver.
Yeah, that was
like-
pretty funny.
Well, it's like she's masquerading as a nun, and so of course
Right.
like whips off her nun habit to reveal her like leather jacket that's half zipped to reveal her like
Right, yes.
bra and
Cyberpunk boob
pulled out
assassin
her
outfit.
double-barreled revolver.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean,
Also,
it
her
is the kind of
guns
show
shoot
where
like 5-foot-long bullets. Or if you look at
Yes,
those bullet
yes.
holes.
it's the kind of show where the main character takes out an unlit cig while he's hiding behind cover from the assassin and sticks it out, and she shoots the cigarette that lights it for him.
Okay,
You know,
I
it's that
Right.
kind of show.
can kind of get behind that. Yeah. All right, so let's close things out with what I think several of us are thinking is the best show so far, and let's talk about Beastars.
Yeah.
Hell
It's a
yeah.
good show.
Surprisingly so.
If you don't mind me going first, because I feel like I have zero history with this whatsoever. I have like no like I've never seen the manga or anything like that.
Yeah, go for it.
I
Man.
didn't even know it was out until we talked about it last time. I was extremely impressed on a lot of different levels with this with the first episode. The just the story by itself, before we even get into the art and animation and everything, was very interesting. The characters are really interesting. The main character, Lugosi, is very interesting. I am very intrigued by it all. And then we get to the look of it. I feel like this is I'm not going to make any proclamations right now, but I think there's a chance by the time this is done, this is going to be like sort of a groundbreaking thing for TV anime. Like, as far as using CG in TV anime, like, I can't think of any examples that look like this and are directed in a way to take advantage of the CG like this.
I've been wondering if part of the reason why it works so well is that they're not human, so inherently their like mouth movements, they don't.
There's less of an
there's less of an
uncanny
uncanny valley
yeah.
there as there would be in a 3D production with humans.
I will say,
There's-
anytime I see their hands and it's human hands, I'm like, I'm a little bit like, mm.
You're gonna have to get used to that, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
I think that's a factor, but I feel like even just the way that it's directed and some of like the choices they make visually to that make it feel like more than just I feel like most CG anime, when I'm watching it, feels like a video game cutscene where it's just like trying to convey what's happening to you without any thought of making it like artistically interesting or anything. And like right off the bat, like in the first couple minutes when they do the bit where with the murders happening and like they cut to dark and like, it's all outlines.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Blood splatter and stuff like that. Like, or like later on, when I think Haru's like recounting things that happened to her throughout the day, and it's like splashed up on. Was it? I don't know.
It's like splashed up on the wall.
Bricks.
Yeah.
Like there's actually thought. It's kind of like, I mean, not even close to the same degree, but if Into the Spider-Verse is the gold standard of how to do 3D, CG anime, part of the reason for that is they're putting more thought into just how can we convey what's happening in the scene to people and make it like an artistic experience. I was very impressed with all of that.
Like in the same vein, there's the one scene with, I think it was like a weasel or something, or the guy who wants the part, and it's like, he's getting berated by Lewis, and then it cuts to his eyes. And I thought that was just a really nice thing of like, because it really focuses your emotion into his emotion, because like you can already tell he's pissed off, but then like obviously the eyes show it the most, and that's why they focus on it. And yeah,
totally. It's really interesting how they are leveraging, because I could get real into the weeds about like some of the like interesting art direction choices they've made with Beastars. Like, I will be honest, I think some of it works for the better, some of it works for the worse. Like, there's a couple of scenes that are recontextualized in the anime that I think don't quite work out compared to the manga, but I would say overall, I think it's really like there's a real directorial flair to like the way Beastars is being shot that I think is super interesting.
It'll be interesting to see too, like how much the animal personalities come into play, because I found it like interesting how Lugosi and Haru seem to be subversions of their animal. Like Lugosi is very meek, and he's a wolf, so he's supposed to be like ferocious, whereas Haru is very outspoken as a rabbit, and rabbits are supposed to be really sheepish, or not sheepish, that's sheep, but like really shy.
Different animal.
but then you
have yes, I do understand.
Right.
Sheep, right?
But then you have like Lewis, where you would totally think of a stag when you think of some kind of like pompous.
Yeah, I mean,
jerk.
You kind of already nailed, Marlon. You kind of already nailed what is perhaps the beginning of what makes Beastars interesting. Right? Is the like I said, the contentious relationship between the three, right? Lugosi and Haru, who kind of occupy the opposite stereotypes of their expected species, with Lewis, at least so far, seemingly being the paragon of what his kind is meant to be, right? Like, you see it early on with like Lewis's like his pride, his arrogance, his very outright blatant racism towards carnivores. Like, there are interesting elements to be at play already, and I think that the first episode does a pretty good job of establishing those parameters.
Right. Iro, what did you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I know, like, G, you keep saying, like, this isn't as good compared to how the manga does it. But
With no frame
right,
of
with
reference.
without frame of reference, I thought it was pretty good.
No, don't get me wrong. I'm glad to hear that for sure. You know, I think it's just like there were some minor things that did bother me a bit, like Lugosi getting the scent of Haru and like activating his like ultra instinct or whatever is
I
a
was
little goofy to me
confused
compared to like
by that.
how it's done
Right, but like
in the manga.
I feel like lately we've been complaining about adaptations that are so boringly one-to-one panel
Yes,
to
yes.
line exactly the fucking same, and it doesn't work.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so hearing you say, like, it's almost like, oh, that's good when you tell me, oh, this isn't like the manga. I almost want to. I almost
guess-
feel like, oh, that means they're actually adapting this
Yes.
thing and putting thought
You're-
into
Right.
it.
You are correct. I will admit I am definitely coming from that background of like I will inevitably have to hold this to the standard of the manga because I read it, and I guess the thing is my concern goes beyond just like artistic ones into some like slight narrative ones. Like for example, like a non-spoilery example is when Lewis lays the flowers at kind of Thames what would you call that? Like, memorial, right? Like you see he's doing it while he's walking there and he's being like eagerly gossiped about by the girls around him, right? Whereas in the original manga, it's actually just him and Lugosi. The idea is that Lewis went there alone, and the way I guess I'm trying to frame that is like, yes, Lewis does a lot of things for show because it is who he is as a person, as a deer. Like he does a lot of things for show to publicly display his sense of superiority and place in the world. But him laying flowers at Thames Memorial is actually a deeply personal thing that he does, even though nobody is watching. Kind of the trope of like who you are in the dark. The idea is that despite Lewis's like veneer of arrogance and contempt for everyone around him,
right? It's not
he
just
actually
for show though. Like he's the type
right.
He is, right? Yeah, and then you got to look at it from the other side of the anime. It has the reality of dealing with this is the first time we're seeing this character, and we have to
right. So they are forced to include those characters to talk about.
Right.
Oh, this is who Lewis is.
So there's a kind of
Whereas in the
trade-offs
manga,
you may have to make in
yes,
adapting,
yes.
but
it's just it's one of those things for better or worse. Like again, this is just me obsessing over very tiny details. But in the anime, it's almost portrayed more as he's doing this as a performative thing, whereas in the manga, that it is a sincere act.
Right.
Do we have any idea how many episodes this is going to be? Because the anime, the manga is still ongoing, right?
Right.
Are there like good spots where they could cut it off, or?
There are some. I am assuming it's going to go 2 cours, so 26 episodes. I hope so. Anyway,
I've seen some in casting, like we, in the ANN articles that are like, we cast these people. Like there's a panda looking motherfucker.
Yes. So the panda was definitely going to show up,
Okay.
even if there was only 13 episodes. I will have to take a closer look at those castings to see, but yes, there is definitely a big climax that happens like that. I could see them fitting within 26 episodes,
Okay.
so I assume that's what they'll shoot for.
I mean, maybe you haven't looked at this closely, but like, how many chapters was the first episode? Is it just 1 chapter? Like,
it was 2,
okay.
I believe. 2.5, like
Sure.
yeah, like 2. Yeah. So at that pace, we'll see. I don't remember the exact places in the plot off the top of my head. I kind of remember the big moments, but yes, there's like, oh man, that fucking story goes some fucking places, y'all. Y'all don't. I could post it. I could post an out of context panel in the chat right now, and y'all would fucking not even begin to understand what is happening.
Let's just leave that. Let's just leave that alone.
But yeah, no, don't worry. There are definitely places they can end this.
Yeah, I talked about in the beginning how like I'm hoping by the end of this, we'll be able to look back at this as like a groundbreaking shift for CG and TV anime. And my on the flip side of that, my biggest fear is this is just going to die with no one watching it because it's on Netflix. And
Did
it
you see
doesn't.
that the tweet from the mangaka? She's like, was upset or surprised that
It's not showing outside of Japan, right?
Yeah,
And
which I
'cause
mean,
not only does it have that working against it, but it doesn't look like an anime at first glance. So like, I
for
don't know if it's
mainstream audiences that might be a plus.
yeah. Well, that might be true, but the people who are watching anime on Netflix, whoever they are,
Right.
you know,
I mean,
they're going to look at this and maybe not even give it a second thought, right?
yeah. My fears, of course, is that you're gonna have your mainstream audiences see this thing on Netflix, and they're
No,
gonna be like,
off-brand
"Oh, what is this?
It's the knockoff Zootopia.
Right, what is this
It's the
Zootopia ripoff,
transmorpher
right?
of
Like,
Zootopia.
That would be the
Which-
elevator pitch if Funimation got it, but
yes, and I mean, I do understand why people would make those immediate comparisons.
yeah, there are
Like,
right. There
you
are the
know,
similarities and parallels
But,
drawn.
I do hope people give Beastars a chance because I think they'll watch if they watch the first episode, and assuming the rest of the season lives up to the quality of this first episode, and like I think people will quickly realize that Beastars is definitely trying something I think pretty different from other examples of the animal people.
Right. Like even if you're comparing it to Zootopia, like even just the setting of this, like how they chose to go for like almost like a early
Show up boarding school.
yeah, like early to mid 1900s type of setting or whatever. However that correlates in the animal world here or whatever versus present time makes it that much more interesting and unique feeling. But yeah, I am looking forward to seeing more on that, and hopefully Netflix doesn't ruin this one like many of the other projects.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Netflix.
All right, so I think that's pretty much going to do it. Do you guys want to give a quick shout out to D&T?
Absolutely.
I will always take the
D&T.
opportunity.
Okay, so we're talking about the Legend of Galactic Heroes, however you actually say the
Is that Dinoye Teze? I think
something like
I'm gonna
that.
keep.
Sure.
I'm gonna keep trying and probably keep getting it wrong, but I'm gonna keep trying.
I know you guys have
That's the
talked.
biggest
and I
reason
will
to
keep
have
saying
Akagaze on this
D&T.
podcast. Just to have him pronounce
I know you guys
for
have
us.
talked a little bit about it. You guys have talked a little bit about it on your podcast, The Legend of the GLORIO Heroes, but it is airing this season, so it is relevant to mention.
Right, season 2 of D&T, which is kind of correspond. They're rough pace parody with the OVA, I'd say.
Except
So
no
like,
Space Caligula,
Yeah,
right?
they've actually been doing a pretty good job of that so far.
Except no Space Caligula.
alas, no.
No, I guess not. Yeah, no, and a lot less axe murder so
It
far.
sounds like they cut out. Again, my problem with D&T is they cut out the fun stuff. But
I mean, that's one way you could
It's,
certainly put it. I think
They evened out some of the valleys of the show, but I think that also means some of the peaks were evened
Mhm.
out.
yeah, like I think the way to put it is that I think if the original Legend of Galactic Heroes is very much steeped in space opera, like the way I would put it is that the original Legend of Galactic Heroes OVA is operating like the universe in that version is operating on the Empire's rules, and the FPA is along for the ride. Whereas I'd say D&T maybe feels a little closer to like this version of the world, the galaxy is operating on the FPA's like narrative rules, and the Empire is the one getting dragged along. Because you could describe it as drier, but I think in some ways it also feels a little bit more.
well, that would be the effect of cutting out all the fun Empire
Right,
stuff.
like in the 80s, it plays a little better at the time to have these power armored guys like axe murdering fools and shit like that. I think or like
I think their choice on the power armor is even more ridiculous, personally. But
I don't know. I mean, yes. I mean, I don't know if we can use that as
You're right,
defense
you're
because
right.
it looks like we're gonna get. It looks like we're gonna get a fucking mech battle soon.
Looking forward to
I guess what I
report
mean
on
is
that.
like the like tonal sensibility of the show is
yes.
is more
I think
closer to like a political thriller.
right.
Than
I think I would lean less on the power armor stuff and more on the the space Caligula not being there or not being the same.
You can complain that Bucock and Fisher look identical.
Oh, really?
Yes, they look way too similar. It's a big problem. They both just look like old white dudes with
great.
mustaches. Like, at least in the original, you could tell them apart because Bucock was a little
Right.
fatter, but...
And also, like, I still just
but
can't
yeah,
get
I mean, I
behind
think-
Castle News design. It just doesn't look right.
Yeah, it's definitely the worst redesign, I think, of the
Point
batch.
is,
Like,
DNT is back, and since that's where G and I started on the franchise, basically, it's like it's
yeah.
it's kind of nice to go back, and it's kind of nice to go back to stuff from season 1 of the OVA with like
Yeah.
having watched 90 episodes of the OVA, like
Now you know what's going to happen. as
we
opposed to-
have that knowledge now of watching DNT, and so it's interesting to see,
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I think we are still like interested in DNT because, yes, you could argue it's an inferior like presentation of those events, but it's still Legend of the Galactic Heroes. It is still that story. It is still those characters, right? It is still Yang Wen Li dropping platitudes about fucking society and human nature and the inevitability of violence in our world and all that stuff, like it is still that stuff, it is still little boy Julian shaking hands with Kirky eyes. It's my god, Julian looks so young in
You
this
mean like
anime.
his actual
Like,
age, or
thinking of the acts Julian will have to commit in the next 90 episodes of this
All right,
thing.
don't make this too Legend of the GLORIO heroes here.
Oh, this little boy is going to see so
All right,
much.
all right.
It's got to grow up fast. Yeah.
we can continue this in the podcast
Uh,
of the
Point is,
legendary
like,
1988
I
OVA.
think if you're I think if people have interest in Legend of the Galactic Heroes, but think the OVA is way too daunting of a task, I think starting with DNT might be a good idea to like get your feet in and
Your
like
appetite.
see if it's something that would actually appeal to you.
Yeah, because I mean, it's still going to give you the general idea, right? And it's going to more like, okay, well, if you like this and want to watch a better version,
All right, yeah. Like no,
I know what Joe means.
Yeah,
It's like,
I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's how
I
it
think
worked for
both
you
you have-
guys, right? Like,
yes. That's the thing. I think both of you guys have valid points. I think the idea is that if you watch DNT and you think that you truly, genuinely enjoy the like political aspects of it, the political thriller, the space battles, right, the discussions on like politics and society, if those stuff interest you, like those things are core to Legend of the Galactic Heroes, no
Right.
matter what Castle New or
Right.
Bittenfield
the
look
strong
like.
points of
you
the
know.
strong points of DNT and the strong points of the OVA are the same. It's just
Yeah. Also, DNT, because it exists in the 21st
So
century,
someone
allows us to have a
yeah.
scene
yeah.
of having Yang order French fries from a food truck and eating them in the park while he's talking to Bucock about the fucking
Okay,
coup that's
I
coming.
can get behind that.
You know, the original OVA could have do that. I guess French fries didn't exist back in the
few
80s.
trucks, right? A few trucks.
Also, I do like the
Trucks.
opening and ending. Savano
Please,
track.
it's the
Yes.
FBA. They're freedom fries.
Yes, like yes, and I mean that's also the thing, right? Like you know, right? Like the thing about DNT is like everything on paper sounds like the most fucking insulting thing on the planet, right? Like the character designs are being done by the Kuroko no Basketball people. Like
The opening is
yeah, the opening is Hiroyuki Sawano, which compared to the original legendary OPs, you're like, it is so easy to go on that rant of like, oh, this is a fucking like spitting on the legacy of Legend of the Galactic Heroes. But then it turns out that Binary Star is actually a fucking god tier OP, and I might even rate it above some of the original show's OPs.
Okay.
So
I think the OVA OPs are okay.
All right, this is becoming Legend of the GLORIO heroes.
But,
Yeah.
you're right, Iro. I'm sorry. You get
Yeah.
we've become those people, as we've
Yep.
said. We'll talk about
100%.
the show for hours and hours.
Okay,
on our own
okay.
devices. So let's.
Point is, I think so. Yeah, so to bring this all back to talk about this season in general, I think the pervasive theme or thought I think with this season is like week 1 of this season was really dire, right? Like
Yeah.
things were not
Right.
looking good, right? We were getting
We
a
didn't
lot
even
of
talk about-
your Orosukis.
we didn't even
and
talk
your-
about most of those
child
shows.
rape, like that happened.
Yeah.
like really, really
Yeah,
bad stuff. And it's weird, but a somewhat interesting, I suppose, that it is with the second week of anime, where we start to get your stars aligns and your no guns lives and your B stars, where I think this is still kind of a rough season, but I think there are also a few shows that are undeniably worth keeping an eye on.
Yep. There are things to watch for sure.
Thank the Lord.
Okay. Well, that's a good note to end on then, and we'll be keeping up with these throughout the season as we usually do. Of course, it's the last season of the year, so we'll have some fun things I'm sure to talk about toward the end of the year. But yeah, let's do our housekeeping. You can check out all of our stuff at theglorioblog.com, including all of our first looks for all the shows that we watched. So if you want more detailed impressions or want to yell at us and tell us we're wrong about specific shows, that is probably the best place to do it. You can follow us on Twitter at @theglorioblog. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube. And you can check out our other podcasts on there, including the aforementioned Legend of the GLORIO Heroes. So if you want more of that discussion that we just had, go check that out. And also GLORIO's King of the Kaiju with Chris and Collins, talking about old kaiju movies. Those are fun as well, so check those out. And that'll do it. We'll talk to everybody next time.
Bye.
See you later.